The Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment is an experiment conducted by the U.S. government that involves 600 rural African American males, 399 of which had already contracted syphilis and 201 men that did not have the disease. The government failed to let these men know of their medical condition, as well as failed to provide the cure for syphilis when one was discovered. Instead, the government offered free meals and free burial insurance for participating in the study. The Tuskegee Experiment lasted 40 years, from 1932 until 1972, and targeted impoverished African American male sharecroppers from Macon County, Alabama, where over 80% of the population consists of African American people. The Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment was originally intended to document and treat syphilis in the black population. Due to the Great Depression, the funding for the study was cut, which in turn led the United States Public Health Service to stop the study and turn it into what it is known for today. The Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment was originally intended to last about 6 to 9 months, but instead lasted 40 years. During this experiment, the United States Public Health Service used 399 African American males to study the long-term effects of untreated syphilis in black men, while another 201 men were used as the control group. Oliver C. Wenger, the director of the Regional PHS Venereal Disease Clinic in Arkansas, played a critical role in developing early study protocols. Wenger continued to assist the Tuskegee study when it was adapted as a long-term, no-treatment observational study after funding for treatment was lost. Raymond A. Vondelaire was appointed on-site director for the research program and developed many of the long-term protocols. He was also responsible for the method of gaining consent from his patients by portraying it as a special free treatment. Registered nurse Eunice Rivers was recruited at the start of the study to be the main contact with the participants in the experiment. She was the only study staff person to work with the participants for the full 40 years. Most of the African American staff who assisted the Tuskegee experiments were made to believe that they were part of a medical experiment that was in the best interest overall of poor black residents of Tuskegee. Syphilis is a sexually transmitted disease that, if left untreated, leads to terrible symptoms and may even result in death. At the time, African American men in Alabama did not have the means to health care. The study, as advertised, called for African American men offering free health care when participating in the study. The majority worked as sharecroppers and had never been seen or examined by a doctor before. Unfortunately, these men saw this as an opportunity for free medical care and did not hesitate to jump on the opportunity. As required by law, medical professionals are obligated to treat their patients to the best of their abilities, the goal being to offer the best health care they possibly can, using medically approved treatment for the particular illnesses. However, if doctors needed to perform certain experiments on the patients and/or enroll them in a study, they would need a written informed consent. The informed consent requires that the patients be knowledgeable of the study being performed, as well as the possible consequences that may result. Once the patient understood all the risks for the study, they may give their written consent, allowing doctors to enroll them in the study. In 1947, shortly after World War II, the revelation of the Holocaust and related Nazi medical abuses brought about changes in international law. The Nuremberg Code was formulated to protect the rights of research subjects. The Nuremberg Code is a set of research ethics and principles for human experimentation. The first point in the Nuremberg Code states, "Required is the voluntary, well-informed, understanding consent of the human subject in full legal capacity." However, even with new changes implemented regarding research subjects and informed consent, the doctors involved in the Tuskegee study still denied the 600 men of that right. Unfortunately, during this experiment, the doctors deliberately withheld information from the patients. In this case, it was the crucial fact that the patients would not be receiving proper treatment. The patients were not even aware of their actual condition, since the doctors referred to their illness as having bad blood and never informed the patients that they had syphilis. The men in this study were told that they were receiving proper treatment, but instead were given aspirin. The doctors were performing multiple procedures such as spinal punctures, chest x-rays, as well as blood tests, monitoring the advancement of syphilis in these patients. In order to ensure that the patients return annually for the checkups, the United States Public Health Service would offer warm meals, furnished beds, as well as free special treatment for those men who showed up. This all came at a huge cost, and the hot meals did not begin to make up for the horrible symptoms of syphilis that those men had to endure, such as heart disease, blindness, paralysis, insanity, and eventually death. In 1947, penicillin had become the standard treatment of syphilis. The Tuskegee scientists continued the study without treating any participants. They withheld penicillin and information about it from their patients. In addition, scientists prevented participants from accessing syphilis treatment programs available to other residents in the area. In the early 1970s, Peter Buxton, a PHS venereal disease investigator in San Francisco, found out about the study and released the story to the press. On July 26, 1972, the article written by Gene Heller, entitled "Syphilis Victims in U.S. Study Went Untreated for 40 Years," became front-page news in the New York Times. As a result of the public uproar, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Public Health Service appointed an ad hoc advisory panel to review the study. There were several different aspects of the study that were set to be investigated: law, religion, medicine, education, labor, health administration, and public affairs. 9 members were assigned to this panel to execute the review. The panel found that the patients in this study had agreed to be examined and treated. However, the men were unaware of the study. The researchers had also been responsible for withholding information regarding the real purpose as well as the risks it poses. There was no evidence of the informed written consents from the patients. Among other reasons, the panel reached the verdict that the study be terminated, stating that this experiment is ethically unjustified. In November of 1972, the Assistant Secretary for Health and Scientific Affairs announced the end of the study. A year later, a class action lawsuit was filed by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People on behalf of the study participants and their families. The U.S. government paid $9 million and agreed to provide free medical treatment to surviving participants and family members infected as a result of the study. The benefits also include burial insurance. The consequences of this study led to the death of 28 men from syphilis. 100 men died from related complications. At least 40 wives were infected and 19 children contracted congenital syphilis at birth. The subjects of this study suffered much more than physical pain and symptoms. They were treated inhumanely, denied of their rights, and made to suffer consequences while under the impression they were receiving the appropriate treatment. Although the country as a whole stood against this experiment, John Cutler, a doctor involved in the study, disagreed, saying these individuals were contributing towards the health of the black community rather than simply serving as guinea pigs for the study. When confronted about denying the participants penicillin after it had become the standard treatment for syphilis, he argued, it would be undesirable to go ahead and use large amounts of penicillin to treat the disease because it would interfere with the study. On May 16, 1997, President Bill Clinton held a ceremony at the White House for surviving participants where he formally apologized.
The United States government did something that was wrong, deeply, profoundly, morally wrong. It was an outrage to our commitment to integrity and equality for all our citizens. To the survivors, to the wives and family members, the children and the grandchildren, I say what you know. No power on earth can give you back the lives lost, the pain suffered, the years of internal torment and anguish. What was done cannot be undone, but we can end the silence. We can stop turning our heads away. We can look at you in the eye and finally say, on behalf of the American people, what the United States government did was shameful, and I am sorry.
Even with the benefits offered as amendment, even with the president's ceremony and apology, the consequences suffered by these men and their loved ones are unrectifiable. The men of this study were treated as lab rats and denied their rights. They were kept in the dark while being experimented on, without being aware that there was never a treatment taking place, and that their lives were portrayed as worthless. As Henry Reisner, a news anchor, mentioned, our government thought it was rectified, and they were in the right to use human beings as laboratory animals in a long and inefficient study on how long it takes syphilis to kill someone. Clinton stated in his apology, "No power on earth can give you back the lives lost, the pain suffered, the years of internal torment and anguish. What was done cannot be undone." The United States government failed miserably at upholding the human rights given by the Constitution and allowed such a shameful, unethical experiment to occur.